I have big news to report to you today on two different fronts, but before I get there, this is Anthony G. Martin of the Liberty Sphere Report, by the way, and I would like to give a special shout out to some very special friends of mine who have been valuable to me both personally and professionally. I'd like to say hello to Margaret and Pamela, and then there's Pam Geller. And then, of course, there's Jim and Sharon Niedner, who have a radio broadcast out of Houston, Texas. And then, of course, there is a CJ and Toulouse, who broadcast out of the heartland of America through the Patriot Heart radio network. There are many more that I could mention, but I simply don't have time. I'll be saying hello to the rest as time goes along. Now to the news. There is a major update to the breaking news story of the scandal developing at the White House, the Department of Justice, and the Chicago political machine. Now, as I have reported to you, there is something afoot under the radar screen that is gradually being seeped out into the media. Involving characters such as Rod Blagojevich, Tony Rezko, Valerie Jarrett, Rahm Emanuel, and Barack Obama. The entire Chicago political mob, as I refer to them. And the reason why I refer to them as a mob is because Chicago has a long history of corruption in the political realm. Now, this has been verified over and over through the years, and yet somehow nothing is done to clean out the corruption. Even Mayor Daley is part of it, as was his father. The Richard Daley Sr. of the 1960s operated one of the most corrupt political machines in the entire country when he was mayor of Chicago, as we found out in the 1960s when the Democratic presidential convention was held in Chicago. Now, the scandal is broadening. It involves the Department of Justice and voter intimidation, implicating the new Black Panthers, implicating SEIU, the union that used to be run by Andy Stern. And by the way, Andy Stern is another figure who is implicated in this scandal. Acorn, which as we all know has been totally discredited to the point where they declared bankruptcy and went out of business, but somehow are managing to reappear throughout the country under various and sundry names among various and sundry states. All of this ties in together. There's even a dirty land deal that we have been alerted to revolving around Valerie Jarrett, probably Barack Obama's most beloved and trusted close advisor. She owns a real estate venture in Chicago that is now being investigated and implicated in a corruption scandal. And of course, we all know about Tony Rezko's dirty deals as a real estate developer in Chicago, for which he went to jail. We all know about the Rod Blagojevich case. And then, of course, there is the infamous play for pay scandal involving Obama, Blagojevich, and the Senate seat vacated by Barack Obama when he became President of the United States. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. We're talking here about massive nationwide voter fraud and election tampering on a scale that we have never before seen in this country. But that's not all. We also happen to know that in Chicago, there is a scandal developing revolving around some of Obama's closest friends within that Chicago mob, some of whom have been named and some of whom have not been yet named. And this ties into the Trinity United Church of Christ, of which Obama was a member for over 20 years in Chicago. Remember the Reverend Jeremiah G.D. America Wright, the profane liberation theology preaching black preacher who served as Obama's pastor? This scandal somehow ties into that entity. And also Rahm Emanuel's closest friends and associates. And by the way, Rahm is presently running for mayor of the city of Chicago to replace another corrupt mayor, Richard Daley. Now, all of this ties in together, and here's how we know. An FBI mole was sent in to infiltrate the inner circle of this mob. This individual is feeding information to the FBI. The information is ongoing. The investigation is ongoing. This is an FBI mole that had been himself convicted of crimes, and yet in exchange for not doing time, he agreed to infiltrate the mob, pose as one of them, and feed the information, of course, directly to the FBI. And then there is a conversation that I've been aware of today, alerted to me by another contact of mine in Chicago, who states that for at least 2 years he has been knee-deep investigating this scandal and can confirm that the allegations and charges that you have heard made by Judicial Watch, Big Government, the Pittsburgh Tribune Review, and also Ulsterman at his website, that these charges and allegations are in fact true, and it goes much deeper than that. This is a quickly developing story, so stay tuned, and as soon as more information is made available, you will hear it from me. You can count on that. This is Anthony G. Martin, and this has been the Liberty Sphere Report.